Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel. This is a channel for educational videos, and we like to focus on great theories of everything, ancient and modern, and mostly obscure, things that you probably haven't heard about, but if you had, now you have, um, they would help you with your paradigm shifting, your awakening to 5D consciousness, your quest for better spiritual, mental, or physical health, and your formation of a holistic worldview. Today is our 71st video that we've done on the book called Mastering the Core Teachings of the Buddha from Daniel Ingram. And Ingram is a physician, but in his spare time, he goes over to monasteries in the Far East and meditates 18 hours a day for months at a time, and digs deep into the preserved traditions of the various Buddhist schools over there, and puts it into English and pragmatically, and puts it at our doorstep. And he's gone down a lot of blind alleys, and he has, paid his dues, and he brings it back to us so that we don't have to do that. So it's right here for us. All the things that he thinks that we should know about Buddhism, all in one book, and he focuses on, I don't know if he would call himself a Buddhist, maybe. I certainly am not, but it's not about that. It's really about the process, the techniques, really the technologies that he's bringing back, particularly in terms of meditation and techniques of meditation, maps of our stages of consciousness, states of mind. And he geeks out on all that stuff. And so he has spent a lot of time organizing this that way. Right now, we're looking at a chapter where he's talking about various different models of awakening, different traditions over there, and other traditions as well, non-Buddhist traditions, have different ideas of what an awakened or an enlightened person looks like, how you can tell if you are awakened or enlightened. And so he's right here talking about the true self model. And we're going to resume from where we left off yesterday. At their very skillful best, true self and no self teachings are talking about the same thing, just from different perspectives. In short, when the artificial boundaries and misperceptions fall away, there is just what is happening. You could say in some strange way that all this was you, or you could equally state that the whole field was not you. There are potential advantages and problems with both. Just as with the unity models, if you say the whole unbounded, causal, natural, intrinsically aware sensate field is me, then many will unfortunately assume all sorts of odd things, such as, for example, that they could somehow control the whole field of experience or the whole universe, that they could somehow perceive all sorts of things, such as feel the whole world in some sensate way beyond what they actually do, and that they could know all sorts of remarkable things about the universe, such as what the animals on the other side of the planet feel like at that time, for example. They also tend to imagine some permanent something that would be this true self. All of those are very confused, narcissistic, grandiose ways of looking at the true self way of describing things, as they all take the delusion of localized control and a centralized permanent perceiver and just extrapolate that out to all phenomena. If you say that the whole world is not me, then some people will similarly misinterpret that, such as by imagining that their body will disappear, that consciousness will disappear, that they will feel nothing, that the sensations of effort and will and the like won't arise, that they will stop moving, that they will stop thinking, and that perception itself will stop permanently. They may believe more mundane things, such as that they should repress themselves and thus try to be less than themselves in various disempowering and life-denying ways. That said, the benefits of no-self teachings are that they directly counter the sense that there is a separate watcher and that this watcher is an I that is in control, observing reality or subject to the tribulations of the world. However, if misunderstood, no-self teachings can produce a shadow side that reeks of nihilism, dissociative tendencies, schizoid behaviors, disengagement from life and the world, and denial, all of which preclude, sidestep, bypass, or dismiss the first training of morality. People can get all fixated on eliminating a self when the emphasis is supposed to be on the words, separate, unchanging, and permanent, as well as on the illusion that is being created. A better way to say this would be stopping the process of mentally creating the illusion of a separate self from sensations that are inherently non-dual, utterly transient, totally causal, without any actual boundaries that could construct a separate self, and thus perpetually and totally empty of any separate, permanent self. Even when you awaken, you will still be here from a conventional point of view, but you will also be just an interdependent and intimate part of this utterly transient universe, just as you always have been. The huge yet subtle difference is that this will be known directly, clearly, palpably, and pervasively. The confusing language eliminating your ego is similarly misunderstood most of the time. As stated before, there are physical phenomena and mental phenomena as well as the consciousness or mental echo of these, which is also in the category of mental phenomena. These are just phenomena, and no phenomenon is a permanent separate self, as all phenomena change and are interdependent. They manifest where they are and without any observer of them at all. The boundaries that seem to differentiate self from not self are arbitrary, conceptual, and not the true nature of things. Put another way, this utterly transient, sensate reality is intimately interdependent and non-dual. Related directly to the problems with true self teachings, there also seems to be something people call various things such as awareness. But awareness is not a material phenomenon and therefore not localized. So even to say there is also awareness is already a tremendous problem, as it implies separateness and a permanent existence where none can be found. Terms and concepts like I and awareness are conventional, expedient, and helpful for relative ordinary work. But for insight practice, it is easiest to say that the specific textures and qualities of this transient space that create the sense of attention, of comprehension, of awareness, are just an intrinsic property of the qualities of experience that arise. Just more textures and qualities, nothing more, and certainly not anything that can be found to be more than that. For the sake of discussion and in keeping with certain strains of standard but very true self-influenced Buddhist thought, such as those that use the term ground of being, awareness is sometimes described as permanent and unchanging. But picking this apart, we notice something subtler about this. If there is experience at all, meaning that things are in the realm of manifestation, time, and the like, then you can say from a conventional perspective that there is awareness, which is to say that there is sensate information. This will always be true when there is experience. That said, you can't find any awareness that is different from phenomena. So, you could just say that while there is manifestation, there is always something manifesting. That doesn't mean that there is always manifestation, or that there is something continuous across those manifest transient moments. Thus, while this would seem to imply something perpetual, there isn't anything permanent that can be found, but merely a repeating quality that presents again and again when sensate information is happening. You could also say that the sensations presenting and the presentation are the same. Then some of the true self schools will say things such as, all things arise from it, and all things return to it. Though again, this implies a false certainty about something that is impenetrably mysterious. More importantly, mixing the concept of an extrapolated infinite potential or ultimate source with awareness is a notoriously dangerous business. As already mentioned, these sorts of misunderstandings are some of the standard traps that lie in wait for people in the middle stages of awakening. We might be tempted to call what we wish to be there either as some perpetual awareness or as some infinite well of potential, names like God, Nirvana, the Tao, the Void, ground of being, Allah, Krishna, intrinsic luminosity, Buddha nature, Buddha, Bubba. And did I mention I currently live in Alabama? Or just awareness, as long as we realize the above caveats, especially that it is not a thing that is separate from phenomena or localized in any particular place and has no definable qualities, in which case we will be okay for a while. Awareness, though formless, is sometimes conceptualized as pervading all of this while not being all of this, and sometimes conceptualized as being inherent in all of this while not being anything specific. Neither is quite true, though both perspectives can be temporarily useful in very specific contexts and dangerous in others. And finally, we have to come to something that is actually much simpler than the term awareness generally implies. Nothing more than just the sensations themselves, much more fundamental and yet more ordinary than anything grand that those terms would suggest. Bubba obviously accepted. If you find yourself adopting any fixed idea about what we are calling awareness here, try also adopting the logical opposite to achieve some sense of direct, inquisitive, paradoxical imbalance that shakes fixed views and points to something beyond these limited concepts. This is incredibly useful advice for dealing with any teachings about ultimate reality, so-called. I would also recommend looking into the true nature of the sensations that make up philosophical speculation and all sensations of questioning, as that more direct inquiry gets much more quickly to the answer. One teaching that comes out of the Theravada that can be helpful or harmful, depending on how it is interpreted, is that there are three ultimate dharmas, or ultimate aspects of reality: materiality, the sensations of the first five sense doors; mentality, all mental sensations; and nirvana. In short, this is it, and that which is beyond this is also it. You will notice that I have mentioned two meanings of nirvana, those being fruition, from which we might extrapolate a false view that nirvana is some ultra-transcendent infinite potential we might enter as a refuge, and as the state of things being perceived as they are, which can give rise to the false view that everything is some stable ultimate something. Notice that awareness is not on this list. It might sometimes be conceptualized as being all three, from a true self point of view that included some extrapolated infinite potential, being just the first two, as those involve sensate experiences, or quickly discarded as being a useless concept that solidifies an illusory, permanent, separate, and/or localized watcher from the no-self point of view, and/or some unknowable and extrapolated well of creation. Summarizing, we can start with the simple practice that notices that as phenomena are observed, they cannot possibly be a separate, stable observer. Thus, the observer is not any of the phenomena pretending to be it, cannot possibly be a phenomenon, and thus is not localized and does not exist truly. This is no self. Taken the wrong way, some practitioners using this emphasis will become averse to all phenomena and/or dissociated. So one must guard against this misinterpretation. Some of the many possible remedies to achieve rebalancing are practices that are embodied, visceral, and inclusive, that still maintain an insight-oriented focus, such as focusing on momentary transience more than on other aspects of no self. As the illusion of duality is just an illusion, when perception is well developed, the sense that the textures of reality actually form some boundary between what we call self and what we call other doesn't exist in the way we generally perceive it to. When the illusion of duality permanently collapses in final awakening, all that is left is all of these phenomena, which is what is meant by true self. That is, the lack of a separate self, and thus just transience as it occurs. Remember, however, that no phenomena abide for even an instant, and so are empty of permanent abiding, and thus of stable existence. Until we have a lot of fundamental insight, the sense that duality is true can be very compelling and can cause all sorts of trouble. We extrapolate false dualities from sensations until we are very highly awakened. Similarly, the more unitive experiences we may have can be so compelling that we yearn for an idealized, solidified, real, abiding, permanent version of them to be the answer. However, now we have a very practical gold standard. If it still seems that any patterns of sensations habitually fail to reveal their true nature automatically, and thus falsely imply a duality or a unity, then those sensations are what must be investigated carefully to understand all this for yourself directly. As both unity and duality clearly fall in the face of such lenses as logic, physics, and deep investigation, the term non-duality has value, and yet obviously it is an inherently paradoxical term, one that confounds reason and our current experience of reality until we are truly accomplished insight practitioners. If we accept the working hypothesis that non-duality is true, then we will be able to continue to reject both unitive and dualistic experiences as being some final answer and continue to work towards awakening, which sees through both of these as limited and missing something critical about the sensations that make them up. This is probably the most practical application of the discussions of no self and true self. There is a great poem by the late Kalu Rinpoche that goes, we live in illusion and the appearance of things. There is a reality. We are that reality. When you understand this, you will see that you are nothing. And being nothing, you are everything. That is all. There are many fine poems on similar themes presented in Sogyal Rinpoche's The Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. Taking no self and true self to the extremes to make some basic points, it is because we are none of this that freedom is possible. And it is because we are all of this that compassionate action for all beings and ourselves is so important. To clearly perceive this moment is to understand both truly, which is the middle way between these two extremes. I also recommend checking out the standard Pali Canon Anti-Dogma Dogma. In, for example, the Root of All Things, a sutra found at the beginning of the middle-length discussions, and the Supreme Net, what the teaching is not, found in the beginning of the long discourses. Okay, now we're at a section that is called the physical models. On a completely different track, we have the physical models, which tend to involve physical perfection or stylization. The old Theravada texts go to great lengths to list the 32 interesting physical qualities of the Buddha, such as having 40 teeth and having arms so long that he could touch his knees without bending down. It is remarkable how bodily ideals change, and in our modern context, that would make him look more to us like a dentally challenged Cro-Magnon than a spiritual superhero. But I digress. Numerous pop culture sources make us associate interesting physical qualities or ideals with spirituality, particularly yoga magazines and martial arts movies. There is not much more to say about these models, other than that they are amusing and completely inaccurate. We may imagine that awakening somehow involves impeccable physical health, or that awakening or insight practice may cure some illness or other adverse conditions, but I wouldn't bank on anything like this at all. That said, my friends who regularly do practices like yoga and Tai Chi do tend to look good, and this only makes sense. However, this is not related to ultimate realizations, except peripherally, in that those practices involve mindfulness, and if done well, can lead to real insights. Does the reduction in cortisol levels that happen through mature practice reduce some of our needless stress reactions to situations and improve our health in some way? Probably, though more data is needed. Is awakening on its own likely to give you 40 teeth and freakishly long arms, or a yoga butt for that matter? Obviously not. Okay, this is called the biological models. Speaking of cortisol, some variants of the physical models are more in the realm of the physiological function models, or systems that involve some alteration in biochemical or neurological function that results from awakening. There are lots of these models, in fact, way too many to list them all. Some are being shown by science to have some merit, while others are preposterous. Some of the ones I consider the funniest and the most dangerous are the belief that awakening involves people becoming breatharians, or people who can exist without eating or drinking and obtain all their nourishment just by breathing. People who, upon becoming awakened, suddenly lose the ability to become sexually aroused or to orgasm. Beware the guru who claims this one and asks you to sit on their lap. And people who suddenly gain immortality and immunity from illness. All these are ridiculous and easily dismissed. On the other end of the spectrum, science is showing that there are real demonstrable alterations in response and function that meditation practice can produce. And some of these are pretty cool. Blood pressure effects, cortisol level reductions, reductions in sympathetic resting tone, MRI, fMRI images, and EEG findings that show alternative pathways or activation in response to external stimuli, as well as internal practice, all panning out to be measurable phenomena. There will likely be many more of these as we gather more data and create more sophisticated measuring devices. There are unusual physiological alterations that can occur in very advanced practitioners, but I'm going to glide past that topic as its intricacies are not my forte or focus here. Then there are models that fall somewhere in between, science and fiction, and where things get slippery and most relevant for our practice. As we have seen in the emotional models section, ideals of spiritual awakening purport radical transformations in our emotional reactions to phenomena. However, many of those ideals also veer far into the realm of the biological, neuroanatomical, and physiological in their potential implications. If awakened beings experience the physical sensations of hunger, that is that desire? If awakened humans exhibit physical sexual arousal in response to various stimuli, is that lust? If awakened humans experience bursts of adrenaline in response to sudden danger that transforms muscular, cardiovascular, and brain function in the standard predictable mammalian ways, is that anger or hostility? If awakened humans are startled in response to a sudden jarring stimulus, is that fear? If awakened human is sleep deprived, circadian rhythm disrupted, sick, or poisoned, can they get grumpy? And is this irritation? If an awakened human is subjected to strong mind-altering substances and they exhibit what we might think of as suboptimal behavior, what does that say about their awakening? When some old monk with pudendal nerve damage from extensive sitting, low testosterone, neuropathy from diabetes due to a rice-heavy diet with little exercise, and pudendal vascular disease finally can't get an erection anymore, does that mean that all awakened men can't get erections? These are the sorts of fascinating questions where the interface between ancient ideals and modern conceptions gets interesting, and often where reality testing of some of the less realistic ideals from ancient times breaks down. Said in more traditional terms, what is the difference between a kilesa or defilement and what is just the natural, unavoidable consequence of having been born human? To what degree can you transform human biology, and to what degree is realization about transforming the perception of and relationship to human biology? I would actually love it if someone with the practical down-to-earth rigor of, say, B.F. Skinner, the well-known 20th century behaviorist, or Alfred Kinsey, the great 20th century biologist, I wouldn't use the word great there, but and sexologists would do the study on those who claim awakening and just put them through their paces, subject them to various controlled conditions, dose them with various drugs, and measure their biological and behavioral responses, particularly comparing how their reported realization holds up both objectively and subjectively to various real-world conditions. The modern world's range of meditation claims seriously needs to be subjected to that kind of scrutiny. That this hasn't happened already hints that the relationship between science and meditation is still relatively infantile. When the experiments are finally done, which I assume they will be if we don't blow up or roast the planet first, I make the following predictions. 1, the traditionalists and dogmatists will rationalize that actual awakened beings are not found today, or that in our times they only exist with low levels of realization. 2, the scientists will be moderately surprised both by the humanity and the unusual responses that advanced meditators and awakened humans exhibit. 3, the meditators being studied will learn very interesting, novel things about themselves and what meditation has and hasn't done to, in, or for them, with both overestimations and underestimations of the real-world effects of practice being corrected by better data. 4, the mainstream world will be more empowered to practice well as ancient ideals that don't hold up are demolished and ancient ideals that do hold up to reality testing are verified. 5, we all realize that awakened mammals are still mammals. I am going to wax a bit personal in the biographical section that comes later and give you my summary of what awakening has and hasn't done regarding my experience of the physiological transformation of this particular mammal, as this is what I can speak of the best. Obviously, we are now at the level of individual case study data rather than broad perspective population-based data, but it will have to do for our purposes here until we have something better. I will draw on the data points of some of my advanced meditator friends who have corroborated some of my observations, so we're at least to the level of an informal case series. As a scientist with an MD and an MSPH in epidemiology, I am disappointed that this is the quality of data I have access to. Still, it is better than much